Today I'm in my garage, as you can see, sitting in a Meridian interior. So I flew up yesterday in the Bonanza, got everything loaded up with Mount Aerospace. We're coating this airplane next week, but I wanted to get started on the seats from the comfort of my own home. So here we are. I really have been meaning to make this video for a while because I want to bring up some issues that I talked to a lot of owners about. So if I just make a video, I think everyone can benefit from that. So we're going to talk about leather, specifically leather that may have already been re-dyed or fixed once or twice before. So we're going to look really closely, and I'm going to show you what I look for when I try and figure out if the seat's already been re-dyed. If the seat's already been re-dyed, a lot of times that adds a little bit more work on the prep end for redoing it properly, and also sometimes it's a whole different color. So rather than me restoring it to the color that I got re-dyed in, we need to figure out what the original factory color is. So I'll show you what I do to figure that out as well. But first off, let's just go over these seats and just look at the general condition. And we're going to look up close and look at some of those telltale signs that would tell you that your seats have been refinished before. Got to see kind of a general impression of these seats. You can notice the wear patterns and things like that, and that's all very common for a Meridian. Now, I'm going to switch the lens, put on a close-up lens, and we're really going to dive in so you can see every little stitch and crack, and we'll totally geek out over this. So here we are looking at the pilot side shoulder bolster. If we zoom in a little bit closer here, see these cracks? First of all, let's look at the texture. So you notice how the texture, like up here, you see how flat that is? It doesn't look like leather, it looks more like plastic. So there's a hint that this may have been repainted. As we look through this area of abrasion, we can also see pretty clearly just the thickness, the buildup, and you can see how it's almost wanting to flake off. Like none of that's normal. That's not usually what OEM leather looks like. And if we focus back here a little bit, look at the stitching, okay? Look really closely at the stitching. You see there, it's painted. There's paint covering up the stitch. Especially on this one, you can see how the leather color is on top of the stitch. Now, if you work on enough of these planes, you would know that this stitching is supposed to be white. So here on the bolster, you can also see more of that texture flattening going on. Usually the bolsters have more wear and tear, so they put more paint on there, which gives you the more plasticky feel. Another reason you would see a thicker film layer, which would render the texture flat, is if they didn't have a good color match, or if they're trying to change the color very significantly, because you have to spray more paint to cover everything up, it's going to look thicker. Now, I got to give credit where credit is due. They did have a pretty good color match here, but one of the places you can also check is in between the seams. So on this lower cushion, if we kind of spread the seam apart, you see how here there's just a little bit of a color difference. It's pretty hard to get even color in there, so a lot of times you can see the original color right there when you pull the seams apart. So now that we've determined with some degree of confidence that this has been repainted, we get to pick a spot to color match from. And the easy way to do that is to pull this panel off here, and we can have some untouched leather here. Now the reason I know that this wasn't painted is because I can actually see the pen lines from the factory, from where they trimmed the leather off. So we're going to use the Color Lock color scanner and put it on here and get a reading. So this is measuring, and it is giving us 776. So that's a recipe on this app. We have that recipe, so we can mix color, which will match this area. Now, it so happens that 776 is generally what comes up for this color Meridian. So I feel pretty good about knowing that this is the actual the actual factory color. If we took a reading up here, just out of curiosity, this comes with color 33. So very similar, but it's objectively a different color. So thanks to this tool, I save a lot of time not having to color match by eye, and the closer I can get to the factory color, the less paint I have to use, so we don't create a thick, plasticky feel. So great tool, love it, makes my job much easier. So we're gonna start with cleaning, not because cleaning is gonna fix our problem in this case, but because it looks cool and it's a good skill to share. We're gonna use Color Lock Strong Cleaner, Color Lock Wooden Brush. We're gonna get some of this foaming action on here. And we're gonna go to town. Sometimes, if you're lucky, this cleaner will actually take the respray off, but we're dealing with a quality respray here, so it's not coming off. We're gonna take microfiber towel, wipe off the residue, and you can tell this area is a good deal lighter. If this leather was intact, all we would do is clean it. However, it's not intact. The other way that I'm going to clean this is using a rather strong solvent. I don't think you can buy this necessarily. I think you have to be certified to buy GLD. This could really ruin your day, so get some of that on there. And we're basically gonna melt it off. You can see that cleans it up as well, and there's actually paint coming off. Let me do another spot away here. So that's the hardcore cleaning GLD. If you're gonna put GLD on something, you should be ready to repaint it as well. So this is kind of a last ditch effort. So just one more cleaning shot, just because it's pretty satisfying. There's a link in the description. You can buy this on Amazon. And if you feel like it gets dry, I usually will spray just a little spritz of water on there as well, which really helps in keeping it cleaning. But that for a smaller area, and especially as dirty as this is, using it at 100% is definitely advised. And this is already so much softer. It's so much less shiny as well. Shiny seats are no bueno. This is what it should feel like and look like, other than the cracks. But again, this is a massive improvement. So since we have a lot of thickness to remove, the best solution here is actually to start sanding, which sounds really aggressive, but it's really safe if you do it right, and it's the best way to do it. We use the Color Lock sanding foam pads. Because it has foam, it helps contour the leather, and it gets in those creases. If this was a hard pad, you would have to worry about shaving off these high points here and not getting in there. So this has actually been developed for doing this kind of work. The one thing you do want to be careful about is you don't want to go over this piping here or over the stitching. Sometimes you see seats where the stitching is kind of fuzzy looking, or almost like chunky looking. That would be because the stitching got sanded, and then those frayed fibers get loaded up with paint, and that's when it gets chunky. But for sanding, basically, just do this deal. Again, very careful around the edges. And we're going to go until we see the texture that we want. So I'm just going to do this tiny little area here for demonstration purposes, because this is where we had all those kind of thick chunks of paint flaking. So after a good amount of sanding, I got most of it off, and the leather's showing through, or starting to show through. So I'm going to switch to using GLD, the solvent, to get the rest of it off, because I don't want to remove too much of the actual leather. So we're going to chemically remove the rest of it until we start seeing those pores. So that's kind of the key to success here. You can see that's all paint coming off. And I'll pull the camera up closer so you can see what I'm doing. I'll kind of do a gradient of what it'll look like once you have all that excess paint off. And it actually looks like leather again. You can start seeing the pores and the holes and the texture of the original hide. Okay, so here we are before. This is after GLD wiping. some of this got sanded, not all of it got sanded. So actually I just noticed another common spot to see if your seats have been repainted. Usually the Velcro is also contaminated with paint. So you can see this one's blacker than this one. When this got painted, this must have not been taped off properly. So there's old paint there. That's actually probably the easiest way to tell, is just pull your seat out. If the Velcro's paint, not black, it's painted, the seat's been painted. Easy peasy. Here's the color that we're going to make. This is Meridian 776, which is our Aviana name for it. That's not what Piper calls it. They're probably just called beige. But we got the color reading with the scanner earlier. So this color consists of white, a lot, ochre, azure, and chocolate. And I'm kind of on a calligraphy kick. That's why it's in calligraphy in black letter. Anyway, so I'm going to make a liter of paint, and I got a very accurate scale here. So we're going to scale everything up. This is to make 100 mils. We're going to scale up to make 1,000 mils, which is a liter. So it's going to be a lot of white. We'll just measure the weight. This is all by weight. And then we're going to stir it for a really long time on the stir plate here. And we'll go from there. Okay, now for my next mess, I'm going to take some paint out of here, put it in here, and we're going to add some cross-linker to this. This is the paint that's going to go on the hard plastic surfaces, so we use a slightly different formulation for that. This is probably, I should wear gloves, but my hands are already dirty, but we got the paper towel. This is going to be messy, probably. Shit. Oh yeah. Flush it. Okay, we'll let that stir. So that'll be the first thing we're going to paint, is all the hard plastic. We're still going to put primer on, and then afterwards we're still going to clear coat, but this is just going to be our hard plastic paint. See all that crap in there? So yeah, strain your paint. So like most Meridians, the corners on the armrest show a lot of wear and tear, so we had to repair that first before paint. And I'm using a heat set paste, leather filling paste, and basically it's a lot of back and forth. You put in some paste, you use this heated silicone grain pad to imprint the grain, and then as it shrinks you gotta add more, so you just go back and forth a few times, and once you're happy with the texture, you can paint it and make it look like new. This whole right in the middle of the piping was a little more challenging. I used a just air dry filler for this and stuffed some in there and just did my best to sculpt it to look like piping. Basically, because there's that split running down the middle, you can't just fill it like you would a normal hole. So this one was a bit more of a sculpting job. Now after all that prep work, we do one more wipe, make sure there's no oils on the surface, and then we start painting. We apply tons of light coats, and I should add there's actually a primer that's applied before painting as well. I just didn't film that step. You can see in between coats we let it dry, we sand it to make sure it's smooth, and then we put on as many layers as it needs to get good coverage, and no more. We don't want thick paint because you remember what that looked like beforehand, right? After all the painting is done, it's time to top coat the leather. So I mixed about 80% matte finish, 20% gloss for a semi-matte gloss, and a little bit of cross linker for added strength. In addition to taking off the shine, so you can see how the finish is nice and matte, this also gives you wear resistance and stain resistance, so that way our dye job is going to last a lot longer. You can see on the left bolster, that's all I'm painting here with top coat. You can see how it's becoming less glossy, so when you look at the reflections in the lights, it just has a nicer, more OEM looking finish. Once everything had time to dry, I packed it all up and drove it back up to Minneapolis, where Malibu Aerospace can reinstall this. So you can see what a big difference that made. It really freshened up the interior of this Meridian, and it was certainly a lot cheaper and faster than getting this reupholstered. While I was up there, I also did a paint correction and ceramic coating on this plane, so if you want to see that, subscribe to the channel, and the next episode will feature that part of this job. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you know someone that needs to see this, please share the video with them, and we'll catch you next time.